Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by former Stevenson head boys water polo coach Frank Reynolds, now having relocated back to Southern California, where he is a project manager with the Reynolds Group, but still keeping a hand in his sport water polo in a variety of facets. Frank, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Coach. Long time coming. Sorry it took so long, but appreciate you doing what you do and staying on me.
Sometimes hard to pin down people that keep having children. So we will take advantage of the time that we have now to finally get this thing on wax. So if you don't mind taking us through your background as a coach, how'd you get into this business? What were your stops before ultimately landing here as the head coach and the run that you had here? Why don't you take us through that journey?
Yeah, so it started, I go back to my playing days. This is where I fell in love with the sport that I coach now, water polo. And, I've been playing the game since I was 8. Grew up down in Orange County, which is a big hub for the sport. And it took me to a lot of beautiful places growing up all over the world, and continued playing in college, and then played abroad. And it's actually when I started playing abroad, I was trying to make some side money, some side travel money, and they offered me to coach 12 and under young kids, and co-ed. And it was kind of there where I fell in love with coaching, and where I realized that I kind of enjoyed seeing the game through not only like different ages of kids' eyes, but I like to see it through individuals' eyes and how they see the game and how they experience the game. And then trying to, one of the things that I really enjoy is trying to like foster that love that they have for the sport, because it's kind of a niche sport. It's not like a big time sport, at least in the US. So it's like if we get a kid on the hook that falls in love with it, how do we foster that so that they can pass that down? Our sport continues to grow and continues to be something that's sustainable and fun that we all love and enjoy. So left Australia and came back to the US, and actually coached with our rivals, Carmel High, for a couple seasons, forgive me. And then had a great experience there. And then came over and was an assistant coach with Coach Fannin for the Pirates, and then took over from there and coached the boys for 4.5 years. There we are.
There we are. Well, heck, let's go back a little bit in time here. So you picked it up at 8. You played in high school. I'm assuming you played club for quite some time during that time, and then went to Cal, which you left off. But we'll make sure we get that out there. And then you called it a niche sport. And statistically speaking, I was looking this up while you were talking for the audience. There are only 27 men's Division I programs in the country and 36 women. And there's only 17 Division III schools and 8 Division II schools. So that's 50 total programs collegiately in the country. Can you talk a little bit about how the sport, as a smaller sport, as a niche sport, how that, what's the right word? The lack of opportunity that exists there for continuing play impacts participation, and different ways in which you've personally experienced that and how you've seen that throughout your coaching career.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that, with the cap on the number of both men's and women's programs in the U.S., you see a lot of like young kids that miss playing at the next level. I think you said 27 D1, 17 D3 on the men's side. That's not a lot of opportunity, especially with the sport growing from a club level. You're seeing high schools in Texas stepping up. You're seeing high schools in Chicago, and Illinois stepping up, in the Midwest, Florida stepping up, like East Coast, Greenwich, and that area is stepping up. So like you're having, the tide is rising, but the level and the amount of teams that are available at the next level is not there. So you do see unique routes. You see some student athletes go on the JC route. There's a handful of great JCs, particularly in California, that offer the sport that at a super high level. And then
ironically enough, to that point, there's actually 45 JC schools in California.
Yeah.
While there's only 50 total NCAA schools.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see these JCs really step up. And, you know, I played with a lot of guys that come from JC, and they're much more mature and poised than an 18-year-old coming from a high school. And it's just you get a different level of athlete if you go through that kind of system, and you're kind of ready to go when you come in at the D1 level from the JCs. But yeah, going back, it's being a niche sport. You really gotta find ways to stick out. You know, and I always daydream about these universities that could offer water polo, like, you know, the Arizona schools, San Diego State for men's, SLO for men's. Be sweet for like the Ducks at Oregon to have a team. And they're slowly adding programs, but I'm hopeful that it kind of picks up a little bit more so that we can offer some opportunity for these kids that really want it.
Yeah, it's also fascinating, and we'll get off this, but 70% of the schools that sponsor water polo are located in California.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the name of the game for the sport. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. California is the mecca of water polo in the U.S. And
absolutely.
That's the way it is.
And that's, you know, being a West Coaster, you obviously have a different feel for it than maybe someone that didn't grow up out here. But let's get into this coaching piece now. So you started coaching in essentially the club scene, right, when you were overseas, and then you come back, you coach a little high school as an assistant, then you become the head coach. What would you say is the thing that you realized most quickly that you had to figure out when you became a high school coach, not necessarily the head coach, relative to coaching club? And then as you transition into the head coach seat, what were the things that jumped out at you right away that was like, yo, this is different than being the assistant?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, so, you know, when you jump to that assistant role, you kind of really find your like what your role is on the bench. Like what are you going to help out with? How can you help the head coach do his job better? What can I do to get these kids lined up and in a way that is supporting the overall mission? So like at times I found that kind of challenging, because you want to touch everyone with your impact, but like sometimes it's like, hey guys, we're just buckling down today, and we're going to work on drive defense. And that's my goal as an assistant coach, is to sit there and not talk tactics, not talk philosophy, not talk anything else except how to move your hips and stay in line with the defender. We're getting really technical. And so as an assistant, I took a lot of pride in like refining those technicalities and making sure that, you know, when I did have time with student athletes and with players, I was just really showing them mechanics, like, hey, get your elbow up here, lift that thing up. We need to widen your egg beater a little bit. We need to work on your strokes on counterattack. So just like really refining and sorting out the technical piece of our players. And then like, as I was fortunate enough to take the head coaching job, it totally transitioned. So like me worrying about the small technical and mechanical works of each player, that's not going to help us achieve our goal as a thing. We hire great assistants in order for us to do that. So I would say like when you get that head coaching role, obviously the administrative, the scheduling, the philosophies, all of the different, programmatic details that you need to really iron out. How many guys do you want to travel? How do you make cuts? How do you figure out roles? How do you figure out who you got? How do you figure out training schedules and pool times? And so kind of like the logistical side, which is really, as an assistant coach, you can just like be like, hey, thanks for doing that, coach. Like, yeah, right on. But like when you get to the head coach, all that stuff falls on you, and so everyone looks to you for that. So you really got to I had to get organized, and I had to get organized quickly. And so that was something that I really found as a head coach that I couldn't sleep on.
So what areas would you say as you shifted seats and you started having to delegate some of that out? Can you talk about your process and vision for division of labor amongst the staff that you had, and how, if you had to go back and do it again, or when you have your next head job, how you would maybe shift some things? Because you said 4.5 years. So obviously you got better at it over those years, given the success that we had. But what are some of the things, as you mentioned, all the admin work that probably becomes 90% of coaching when you're the head coach? How would you say you delegated some of that stuff out? And what would you say you'd do a little differently, or maybe the next time you'd make sure you button down a little more?
Yeah, good question. I would say I would be, if I could go back and do it again, I would be a little stronger at delegating and just saying, hey, maybe even hire somebody as an admin, or have somebody on staff that's like a really, really tight admin. Our coaches are, the coaches that we had and that I worked with were fantastic, and they would be so brilliant in terms of scheduling and reaching out to people and getting us on the things. But I don't want them to have to, I would want them to be focused on kind of their roles too. I got enough for them to worry about. So I think going back and actually having somebody who's like, hey, what do you need today? What do we got? Okay, let's get that dialed in. How are we looking next week? How are we looking for our tournament? What does our AD need? What can I, kind of somebody that's always like keeping me on my toes. And I feel like that would be something that would be very, very helpful, and just allow me to focus more on the players and the coaching staff and kind of like the larger goals. Because that's always something that kind of, and it's unavoidable as a head coach, and that, but it's like, if you could just take a little bit of that pressure off you, I think that would be super valuable.
So let's talk about that piece for a second then. So you can focus on the players and the coaches. What does that look like? Focusing on the players and the coaches. How would you describe that for somebody that's looking to become a better coach, or just getting into it and wondering, what is my responsibility for focusing on the players, focusing on the coaches? Can you describe what that would look like in your perfect world?
Yeah, I think so. So, as a head coach, you are the pillar of the program. So what you put into it, you get out of it. So we all have only so many hours in a day. If I'm investing X amount of time into, and you need to figure out how to chop that time up. So I need to invest X amount of time into talking to coaches about strategy, into scheduling, into rosters, into depth charts and things like that. And then you got to spend enough time with players to figure out where their head's at. What do they need to work on? Where are we? How can we get them from A to B? What are their individual goals? What are their group goals? So like you're always analyzing. So you have one player whose goal is this, you have another player whose goal is this, but as a team, we have this goal. A coach might have a specific thing that he's working on, and you want to help nurture that, and help them get better in that, because you want everybody to kind of just level up. And so as a head coach, you're always thinking about how to improve. How can I make that player in this next 2 hours leave the pool deck and come back tomorrow a better player? And it might be something very small and minimal. It might be something that has nothing to do with water polo, and it's more cultural or philosophical. But like, in terms of thinking about responsibility, it's your responsibility. You got to own it to make those coaches and those players get better in that small amount of time that you have, which is a lot of pressure. Like, you feel like you come to the pool deck and you feel deflated after, like, dang, I didn't get anything out of that practice. I don't know, I don't think the boys got anything. I don't think the coaches did. But then you show up the next day and they got a little better, and they're showing up with a better attitude, or their passes are a little crisper. So it's just kind of, it takes some time, but you really, if you're patient enough and you let it kind of unfold, it really works out.
Okay, let's talk about that piece then. What would you say if you were to pick up the reins again once the family's a little older, whenever you have a few minutes of free time or you get sucked back into it?
100%.
Michael Corleone. What is the best thing that you feel you did here that you would implement wherever you ended up? Assistant role, head coach role, club, high school, whatever. It's like, this was super valuable and we're doing this. I don't care what the clientele is.
Yeah. You got to surround yourself with the right people, right? So you got to surround yourself with the people so that you want to be there and you want to show up, and you have your mentors in line. Like, I was fortunate to have you. I had great staff. I had guys that I wanted to be around that love the players, that love the school, that love the culture. They're all in. So like, if you have the ability, which I know a lot of coaches don't, but I was fortunate enough to kind of handpick and have a staff that you really can help support you, not as just a coach, but as a man, as a dad, as a human being, as a community member. If you have the right people around you, it makes you a better person, a better coach. So if I was to go somewhere and they say, hey, yeah, you get this job, but it comes with these two people that you don't know, I would say, I don't know. I got to think about that. It's tough. So I think that because the players know when a coach doesn't want to be there. Yeah, we've all had coaches, that come through and they have tough days. You're like, oh man, you don't want to be here today. Like, I get it. Probably something happened at work, something's rough, whatever. But when you bring that level of joy and love to your practice and the players pick up on that, I think that's super helpful. And having your staff around there that supports you, and it's really, I can't say how huge that is.
In addition to that, as you work to grow your knowledge of sport, I'm not going to say water polo per se, but of competition, of coaching, of other endeavors, you've got kids on your team that are multi-sport athletes up here, at least. Are there things that you were able to steal from other coaches during your time here or elsewhere that may or may not have been water polo specific, both in your role in development and missions? You're wandering around, you hang out with me, you look at other things, but I'm always curious about how techniques and ideas translate between disciplines. And I actually use you as an example where I used to just watch practice all the time and then steal stuff for hoops. But it's like, what if any, can you offer from that lens?
Yeah, I think that's great because, the RLS community is such a diverse and like rich coaching space. It's so you can pop over to lunch and I'm talking to Lucy, who's got her own ideas for girls hoops. I'm talking to you every day, and I'm talking to Kehoe and Casatano, and you just bump into everybody, and you kind of see it. What I really liked to do is just to go and see our other Pirate teams play, and I would just watch the coach. I would just watch, how you would operate on the court. I would watch how you interact with refs. I'd watch how you collect yourself in timeout plays. I would watch, I'd watch how Kehoe calls timeouts. I'd watch how he subs. I would watch Burke and John Burke and for the women's team, and just, see how he would collect himself before timeouts and how he would prep his players before and after games and practice. So, it's hard to take certain drills from other sports and apply it, but I see the way that our coaching community operates in live time battlefield kind of games. And then I would try to emulate kind of the stuff that I love watching from you guys. And whether that's, that could be honestly, one of my biggest ones was kind of like how how some of our coaches communicate with players individually as teams, can get them, on a tough day for a kid, how to have a conversation with them. I feel like the way that we treat the person over the player, the way that we treat the student, like really care about them. I take that, and I think that's like the most important lesson I've got from our coaches, was just like, hey, these, what's up with this kid? Something's going on. Let's figure it out. We can really put our heads together and make sure that this becomes a positive. And I really value that. We're not just coaches. Like, we're not just X's and O's. We're really helping, some of these students, figure it out, which was like a really, really special part for me. Oh, I can't hear you, boss.
I push back a little bit and maybe ask you to give one or two examples of what you picked up watching others. You said timeouts, you said X, Y, and Z, but you also said you try to take what you enjoyed. So are there maybe one or two examples of where you saw something and then that became kind of your approach intentionally, that in games or in practices, you were like, oh, I saw this, I'm just going to apply it?
Yeah. So I'll use, I like using you, for example. So like, timeout play, you don't waste any time. You're really efficient. So like, I love seeing your efficiency. You know what's happening. Like all the eyes are on you in a huddle, and it's not in like a mean, scared way. The players aren't scared, that they are present. And so like, whenever I would call a timeout, I'd always make sure I could see the whites of the guy's eyes. And like, I just loved seeing, how they would run to you and then just be glued, and then nothing else existed. And so that was something I was like, you know what, boys, like, I don't care how tired you are. You need to sprint in a timeout over to me. You can rest when you get to the wall, but like, we're not coming in soft and tired to the timeout. You're coming in, and we're going to go and execute from there. So like, that's something that I really, would study you. And then, going back to like, I loved watching our boys lacrosse team, and like the way that they prepared before the games, and the way that the coaches had them, it was almost like artistic, just like the way that they would shoot and get in lines. And then I remember like, we played Bellarmine a couple years ago, and it was just like, you could see the boys walking up from campus up to the field carrying the flag, and it was just like the way that the coaching staff got those guys prepared. I was like, that's how we need to operate every time. I don't care who we're playing. The way that we need to operate, that is just like that shows the team that you're ready to go. And so, those are two good examples that I always would kind of refer back to, which was cool.
Yeah, let's dig into the first one a little bit more from a water polo perspective for people that are listening. And since you used it as a basketball, for those who aren't listening, I coach basketball and timeout. So things to be aware of. You mentioned it's 60 seconds if you're lucky, right? It's 30 if you're not lucky. And so that time is super important. But things to be aware of in water polo. So for example, in basketball, timeout happens. What's the time and score? Whose possession is it, right? In basketball, there's a jump ball. Do we have the ball coming out of the timeout, right? Are we drawing up a play? Are we talking about defense? Is it something that I can give kids ownership of, or do I need to insert myself, right? So in water polo, what are the things that you have to be aware of in that timeout, similar to what I just mentioned in basketball, so that you can be efficient and strategize in that 60 seconds without wasting time?
Yeah. No, I know that's what I'm saying. That's like, I love hearing you talk about it. So it's kind of the same, similar, but unlike basketball, you can have power plays like in hockey, man advantages. So you have to analyze and see who's in the pool. You got to think about matchups. You got to think about clock. You got to think about set plays and who's on who, and whether or not somebody has, because if you get 3 major fouls, you're excluded from the game. So if you're matched up with a guy who's got 2, you know, I would say, hey, you know, we got to go after that guy, get him kicked out of this game. So you got to like analyze the number of fouls that players have.
So is that a chart like one of your assistants is keeping? It's like, hey,
oh yeah,
as they're swimming over, hey coach, so and so's got 2. Let's go at him.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what happens. So you run over. They say, hey, 13's got 2. I say, hey, so and so, hey, you're gonna post up 2. Let's see if we can get him out right now. Right. You know, we got 12 on the clock, so we got to burn a little bit and then dump it in with 4, and we'll go from there. But you know, that's the really fun part. I love that because you feel it, you know, like you feel it in your heart. You're like, oh, I got, you know, 40 seconds, 20 seconds. You're like, every word counts, every breath counts. These kids know, you know, whether or not you're blowing hot air or what's going on. So you gotta throw it up. You gotta throw it out there and be confident. And it's really fun.
Yeah. How often would you, as a coach, in a game where, say, you didn't call the timeout, right? You guys are playing well, you're in a groove, the other coach calls a timeout. How often are you going into that timeout with designed coaching versus like, I didn't call a timeout, kids can talk to themselves, I'm gonna sit over here on the bench?
Yeah, I like the last one. So if we're on a run and they call timeout, I don't even like to have them come to the wall. I like to have them just, hey, set up, go in your spots, and like get ready to embrace them, and let's keep this running. We don't even talk about anything unless there's like a small adjustment or somebody's injured or something. I like to just say, hey, stay out there, embrace them, you know, get your matchups and just, you know, be ready. So it's like, I think I don't know if it's intimidating, or if it's, you know, even stupid to not have them over and use that time. But I like to just, you know, hey boys, you know, stay out there, run it, and get ready to embrace what's coming. You've seen it, and here we go. So if there's like, but you know, then you get into like big game situations, and you really got to take advantage of that time. So I guess I kind of take it back. So if it's like, if we're not on a run, and let's say we're up 2 and they call a timeout, I'm getting them over and we're saying, hey, this is what they're going to run. We've saw video, we'll pull up their play and that. So I guess you're right. It's like situational, and it's kind of,
well, it depends, Frank. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's early in the game and you're on a run and you didn't call a timeout, there's an opportunity for leadership there that doesn't have to involve you. Right. And so I think if you look back over your 4.5 years here, how would you say your approach has grown or changed or shifted or regressed, like whatever word you want to point in there, in regards to being empowering your athletes to lead versus feeling like you have to be the final say so on everything? Talk us through that.
Yeah, well, I feel like, and I don't know if it's just because of the times, but I feel like I've been blessed with players that, you know, I've had some really strong leaders come through our program, and regardless of talent or skill set, you know, I have guys that can really control the tempo. And at first, it was really hard for me to give them the reins. It's not that I don't trust them. It's just like I was kind of like micromanaging a little bit, and I just was like, hey, like you don't get the microphone right now. And then as you grow older, you know, you start to see, you know, we talk about perspectives, like these teammates really admire what this guy's saying, and so they really respect him because, you know, not only can he play well, but he's respecting his teammates. So you give the guy a little more leeway, you give him a little more microphone, you make sure that he's using that time appropriately and he's not you know, being a negative. But to answer your question, you know, it was I don't know, it's a proud moment to see when you don't have to do anything. You're sitting on the bench pre-warm up, and your guys, your leaders are running warm up. Your leaders are meeting in front of the cage and getting them hyped. And they know, and you just come in and say, hey, let's get a cheer. You guys know what to do. Thank you, so-and-so, for getting us through that. And boom, you're off. So it was like, I had to take the training wheels off. And I remember each guy specifically that, you know, I can picture them through my mind. And then, you know, by the time that it was last year. It was really nice to feel like I could trust our leaders to say the right thing and to be there for them.
Yeah, I'm constantly on a mission to try to figure out how to not do anything. And
I love that. I know. I know. It's good.
It's how do we take, some of the routines we've established in the vitamins and create a system where, basically we just show up and we're the adult, but the team is somewhat self-coached because we've trained them to do that.
Yeah.
Are there things that you have found that expedite that process for, regardless of skill, just potential teammates and leaders that can step into that void and help us find that player coached team?
Yeah. So you mean like, how do we identify those leaders early and cultivate kind of that?
Yeah. I think as you go through whatever your preseason stuff and your postseason stuff, you can kind of see who has the potential, who has social capital, whether they're a good player or not amongst their teammates, but more, how do you give them the opportunity to step into that space without micromanaging them, so to speak? Because those of us that are usually head coaches are micromanagers, and it takes us a while to delegate. Yet we often look back and figure out, wow, our best teams are the teams where we did the least. We managed egos, and we, didn't have to, be Lord and master of every single thing. We gave more away. Yeah. So how do you do that? How do you create opportunities to teach that?
I think that they have opportunities every day. I think they have opportunities around campus. I think they have opportunities in the locker room. I think they have opportunities in the cafeteria, on the bus. And it's like, we're always watching. You can kind of smell it when somebody's, has that kind of that leadership quality in them. And then you peg them and you mark them as, this guy, this has a lot of potential. And then I think you just like quietly observe and notice. And it's of course it's in games and of course it's in practices, but it's like, hey man, can you help pick up that ball? Can you help pull this tarp? Can you help? And you start seeing them just like during cleanups, during, community service, during little things around you where you're like, okay, like you're displaying that in the water. I love that. But you're also displaying it in the locker room. You're also displaying on the pool deck. You also just shook that ref's hand and said, thank you. You also just said, thank you to the team mom, and you're carrying the pizzas down and breaking down the boxes in the trash, so it's like, they're not too big for their britches. They're not too big for anything. And you're always just, I think that the responsibility comes to us as head coaches to like, you can't be sleeping on any of them because there's always going to be moments where, where they show strong leadership. And there's going to be moments where they don't. And that's the reality. Like, that's how it is. And then you got to, as the head coach, it's on you to be like, let's start working on this. What do you think?
Well, I think you do a great job of sitting down with all of your athletes before, during making roster decisions. And you are, I would say, elite at role definition. Can you talk briefly about what that looks like for you when you meet with each of these kids and how clearly you articulate their role, and maybe just give an example or two, which then I would say leads directly into the other answer you just gave, which is you're creating opportunities to lead through clear role definition, which then it doesn't necessarily privilege ability. It privileges, can you star in the role I'm giving?
Right. No, I think, and that's something that I think, roles are so important to me. I think that they're so important in just like daily life and business and work and everything. I just feel, having transparency with your player. And I had my college coach was so good at this. You have, entrance interviews, mid-season interviews, exit interviews, and you constantly know where you are. And so there's no question. You're so prepared for what your role is. And that's not to say, and I'm a big believer in this, roles change. So like I meet with every guy preseason. Hey, this is what we see. The coaches and I have spent, we've spent 20 minutes talking about each player. And so we're spending a lot of time thinking about your role. What do you think your role is? what's your role? How do you think it is? Okay, that's great. You're very close to what we think it is as well, or you're way off, or you're on point. This is it. So it's like, this is your role. So and it honestly, coach, it goes everywhere from like, your role is going to be, you're going to act like our assistant coach, and you're going to manage this team. And that's how we envision your role. And, one of my favorite players that's come through the program, that's what the conversation was with him. And he embraced that role through and through, became a brilliant, pretty much assistant coach for us, was running big time stats and CCS games, was coming up with, his own kind of matchups and things like that we would take into consideration. So, you talk about, swinging the spectrum. I'm talking this guy's role isn't even in the water, and he's embracing it. So you go from, you got that, and then you have, we see your role as, evolving from last year. You're on JV, you're going to hopefully get a few minutes. Your arm's strong, your vision's good. You got to work on defense. We think that if you improve your defense, your PT will improve. So you can always, make sure you're always asking us about how you can improve. And then you get, the full spectrum. Hey, you're our guy. You're our leader. You're carrying us. You're scoring goals. You really, 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 your skill set's off the chart right now, but you have to focus on your leadership qualities. We're going to hold you accountable. We're going to make sure that you're growing, not just as a player, because you're exceeding our expectations as a player, but as an individual, as a person in our community. So it's just like, you leave that meeting, you know where you are. You know where you stand. You know where you stand with this team. You know where you stand with us. You're not second guessing anything.
And what has that done? What has that done for you as a coach and for your athletes to preemptively manage conflict? How have you found that doing that lifting on the front end has made your life easier on the back end?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it honestly alleviates pressure from some of the players sometimes. And after role meetings, kids will feel a little deflated, but it's your responsibility as the coach to pick them up and help them get better and make sure that they're embracing their role. I think the coach's job is to give the role and help the players embrace it. And I think, when you talk about conflict and avoiding it, the more transparent you are, the more that you have the direct dialogue with your player, the more you know what they're thinking and they know what you're thinking, and there's no guessing. I think there's a lot of trust in there and a lot of buy-in. And so once your players start trusting and buying in you, I think that the conflicts, they're usually not internal. There's nothing that, that'll come up between coaches and players. It'll come between players and other things like that, which you have to manage always. And, then there's parents, and then there's, all of the variables that come with it. But what you can control is just like, you can really manage the conflict by having full transparency with your players. In my opinion, it's like, they know where they stand, and you tell them. And then if they have an issue, let's talk about it. I want to hear why you don't think that, and show me why you don't think that. I need you to back it up too.
Would you say that this has allowed you, since you adopted this approach, to not only find roles for everyone on the roster and empower leaders who may not be great players to step into leadership roles, but also to maybe take athletes that are great players and not naturally wired to lead or have any inclination to do that? They just want to show up and play.
Yeah.
Have you found that this has allowed you to find a home more easily for each of your athletes by doing this in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because everybody's got something to work on. Nobody is the best player in the world at water polo, on our team. And so I'm not the best coach in the world. So we all have stuff that we got to work on. I love getting feedback from them and saying, what can I work on? So I think that, everybody, you leave these meetings and you know your role, and we're not trying to come at you. We're not trying to break hearts. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We just want to be transparent with our thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts, and we want to be even. And we want to help you get better as a person and a player. And more importantly, as a person. I don't care if you're a good player. I'd rather you come on the pool deck and respect, the sport, our refs, our coaches, our opponents, their coaches, then come in and score 100 goals.
Yeah. And I think what people are afraid of, especially when they're young in their coaching profession, I know I was, it's like, I don't want to limit these kids by putting them in this proverbial box. But what I found was once I started doing that, allowed them to thrive in whatever role we carved out for them. And instead of being like, hey, you're not a good shooter, but you're a great rebounder, like, let's forget about shooting. Let's just go be elite at rebounding. And hey, every time that he shoots it, that's a pass to you. Go get it. You can take as many shots as you want off of the putback.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that guy's getting 5 offensive rebounds a game and getting 10 points because that's the only way he's touching the ball.
Yeah. And he's embracing it and he loves it. Right. And he's like, gosh, he's having fun.
Right. But that's part of the deal, right? Is like identifying what can your athletes be great at versus what can they be average at, and how do you empower them to do that, which ultimately makes or allows for everyone to feel validated in their role on the team. And that sounds like that's what you were describing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found that in those conversations, the more specific you can get, the more targeted and inspiring you could be for the student athlete. Like, I'm like, I tell a player, hey, we're going to be successful if you can play 22 minutes a game. Mm-hmm. How are you going to be able to play 22 minutes a game? You got to be able to swim so fast for a long extended period of time in order for us to be successful. So how do we do that? We got to train, bud. Like, you gotta swim. You got to swim hard during these sets. And sure enough, he's averaging 27 a game. He's exceeded it. He's playing every minute.
Right.
And it's just, if you can pinpoint how they will have an impact on your success, like if you can just say, if you can really lock down how that individual plays a role in the bigger picture, I think that they really buy in, and it's great for them, and it makes it enjoyable for them.
All right, let's pivot. You've made some shifts in your life in the last few months, and you are now at a place where maybe you've had some mind shifts on things. Like, I moved back to Southern California. What would you say is the thing you have most recently changed your mind on? And it doesn't have to be coaching. It can just be in general. I used to think this, and now I'm over here, and here's why.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, at least for me, it's been like a practice of patience. I feel like when I was, just younger, I would just jump first and not think about it. And I feel like right now with my current situation and with our family and our lifestyle, I'm just trying to really practice and exhibit patience and thinking and thoughtfulness before reacting. And whether that's in business or relationships or whatever it is, I just I've tried to slow down and process things differently instead of being reactionary. And I think that as a player and a coach, I would oftentimes be reactionary. And so it feels like I'm settling into a new mindset with my deliberately trying to practice patience and thinking about how to react to things and thinking about how to say the next thing and not just diving straight into it.
No, and I think that's part of the growth, right? It's like, how do you become more intentional in everything that you do, be it coaching, be it parenting, be it working, be it relationship? How do you take a beat and think through it versus what we generally do when we're younger and let the emotions drive the car there?
Yeah, I know. And it takes practice. It's not an easy thing easy to say. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just trying, I'm just trying my best. And it's a work in progress, but it's good.
Let me ask this and wrap with this. Is there something or anything that you can point to that you've been able to take from your coaching background into your new job where you can say, wow, this definitely translates directly?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, relationships are so important, and the way that you make connections with colleagues, with new players that come into your program. You know, you think about first impressions, you think about how you want to build this relationship. Where does this want to be? Where is this going in 4 years? Where are we going to be in 4 years? And how do we make this successful? How do we work together to make this successful? We want the same thing. You want the same thing. I want the same thing. How do we figure out, with our personalities, with our, our differences, our difficulties, how do we, come together and we achieve this goal, whether it's, whatever, this game, this tournament, this CCS, or this proposal, this bid, this project. You think about all the different people you have to work with and all the different hoops you got to jump through, whether you're on a team or starting a new role. There's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot to work on. I'm grateful for it, Coach. Yeah, I think you were the one that we had a conversation, and I said it from the beginning, and I think one of it applies to what I'm doing now. You gotta surround yourself with mentors and the right people, and so being able to lean on you and lean on some of my other mentors as coaches and as men and people, it really helped me as a younger head coach kind of find my footing. Because it was a big bite to take, and just to have support, and you guys have gone through it, and you have this perspective and somebody has this perspective, and just to hear it all and be able to digest it. I think that's what I miss about coaching, is just all the different personalities, all the players, and all the different folks that are in your circle, and it's just it's a special. Coaching is so important. It's just a special role. And I was fortunate enough to have great people around me and great players, first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. And don't forget, you still have that circle. You just have to return phone calls and texts once in a while. But, anyway, we'll wrap with that. And thanks for being here and taking time out of your lunch to record with us.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.